Officer Jack Miller's patrol car, a black and white Ford Interceptor, screeched to an abrupt halt beside the Elm Street bus stop, its tires spitting gravel. "Hey, you on the bench!" Miller barked, his voice amplified by an aggressive edge as he leaned out the window, eyes narrowed at the frail, stooped woman huddled there. "This isn't a flophouse for vagrants. Time to move along, Grandma, or I'll make you." Agnes Holloway, all 75 years of her, jumped at the sudden intrusion, her hand instinctively tightening around the worn wooden handle of her cane. She'd been sitting quietly on the sun-baked, graffiti-scarred metal bench, the early morning chill seeping into her old bones despite the thin, washed-out cotton jacket she wore. Her sparse, silver-gray hair was pulled back in a wispy bun, revealing a face etched with the deep lines of a long, hard life. Her destination, the Oak Haven VA Medical Outreach Clinic, a bus ride across town, for her weekly physical therapy appointment. The chronic pain in her back and knees, a relentless echo of her years in service, made even simple outings an ordeal. Public spaces, with their noise and unpredictable movements, always stirred a low hum of anxiety within her, a feeling she constantly battled with quiet fortitude. Officer Miller, a man in his mid-30s with a crew cut and a self-important swagger, killed his engine and stepped out of the cruiser. He saw the old woman's shabby clothes, her hunched posture, the way she clutched her cheap handbag like a lifeline, and his internal profiler, honed by years of cleaning up what he considered the city's undesirable elements, instantly flagged her as a problem. This part of Oak Haven, with its boarded-up storefronts and a lingering air of neglect, was his beat, and he intended to keep it orderly. Agnes Holloway had once known a very different kind of order. Sergeant Agnes Holloway, United States Army Quartermaster Corps, retired. It felt like another lifetime, another woman entirely. She'd enlisted in the late 1960s, a farm girl from Iowa determined to see the world and do her part. Women in logistical roles back then weren't often in the headlines, but their work was the steel spine of the military machine. Agnes had served in sprawling supply depots in Germany during the Cold War, then later at bustling airbases in Southeast Asia during the drawdown from Vietnam, ensuring that everything from ammunition to medical supplies reached those who needed them. It was unglamorous, grueling work. Long hours on her feet on concrete warehouse floors, wrestling heavy crates in all kinds of weather, the constant pressure of deadlines and the critical importance of every item correctly inventoried and dispatched. She remembered the biting European winters, her fingers numb as she tallied manifests under dim hangar lights, and the suffocating humidity of a Da Nang monsoon, mud seeping into her boots as she supervised the loading of pallets onto C-130s. There were dangers, too, a near miss during an ammo dump fire in Germany that had left her with a persistent ringing in her ears, and a terrifying nighttime convoy run through a storm-lashed mountain pass in Korea where their truck had skidded perilously close to a precipice. These weren't the heroic tales of combat, but they were her service, a quiet, steadfast contribution that had nonetheless taken its toll. The chronic back pain that now made her reliant on a cane began with a poorly loaded pallet shifter incident in '72. The arthritis in her hands and knees was a bitter souvenir from decades of hard, physical labor in unforgiving conditions. Retirement hadn't been easy. Her small army pension was barely enough to scrape by on, making the comprehensive care she received at the VA clinic not just a benefit, but a necessity. The visible scars of her service were her stooped back and gnarled fingers, the invisible ones were a quiet loneliness and a persistent, low-grade anxiety that made navigating the civilian world a daily challenge. It was because of this combination of physical frailty, living alone, and her documented service-connected health issues that the VA had enrolled her in a pilot program for vulnerable elderly veterans. Part of that program included a small, discreet medical alert pendant she wore around her neck. It monitored vital signs and had a button for manual activation, but more importantly, it was designed to automatically transmit an emergency signal to a dedicated VA Rapid Response Unit, the newly formed Federal Veterans Affairs Emergency Response and Protection Unit, or VARPU, if it detected signs of extreme physiological distress, such as a sudden, violent spike in heart rate or a significant impact consistent with a fall. Agnes hoped she'd never need it. I said, "Move along." Officer Miller's voice was louder now, harsher. He was standing directly in front of her, his shadow falling over her, his hand resting near the taser on his utility belt. Agnes blinked, her mind slow to process the aggression. I'm just waiting for the number 7 bus, officer, she said, her voice thin and reedy. To the VA clinic on Grand Avenue. I have an appointment. She fumbled with the clasp of her worn handbag, intending to show him her VA appointment card and her senior bus pass. Don't know anything about that, Miller sneered, his eyes cold. What I know is you're loitering. This bus stop has had complaints. People like you make the area look bad, scare off customers from the businesses. He jerked his thumb towards a shuttered pawn shop and a grimy convenience store across the street. So, on your feet. Now. Fear, cold and sharp, pricked at Agnes. She didn't want trouble. She just wanted to get to her appointment. Please, officer, I just need to. She tried to push herself up from the bench, her movements stiff and agonizingly slow due to her protesting joints and back. Her hand, trembling slightly, was still trying to open her bag. Officer Miller, however, saw only what he wanted to see, defiance. He interpreted her slowness as non-compliance, her fumbling with her bag as a furtive, potentially threatening movement. His training, or perhaps his temperament, kicked into a high gear in anticipation of confrontation. I said, on your feet. Hands where I can see, he yelled, his voice cracking with adrenaline. Then, almost simultaneously, what are you reaching for in that bag? Show me your hands. The contradictory commands confused Agnes further. She froze for a split second, her old eyes wide with a mixture of fear and bewilderment. That momentary hesitation was all Miller needed. Non-compliant, he roared. Without another word of warning, without any attempt to de-escalate or physically assist the clearly frail old woman, he drew his taser. The yellow plastic glinted menacingly in the morning light. Before Agnes could utter another syllable, before she could fully comprehend what was happening, he fired. The twin probes hit her squarely in the chest, even through her thin jacket. 50,000 volts of electricity slammed into her aged, fragile body. A horrifying, strangled cry was ripped from her throat as every muscle seized in an agonizing, uncontrollable spasm. Her cane clattered to the sidewalk. Her handbag flew from her grasp. Then, she collapsed like a puppet whose strings had been violently cut, her small, stooped form crashing hard onto the unforgiving concrete. The pain was a blinding, all-consuming inferno, unlike anything Agnes had ever experienced. It wasn't the dull ache of her chronic injuries or the sharp sting of a past wound, it was a savage, electrical fire that seared through every nerve ending, making her body arch and convulse on the grimy sidewalk. Her teeth clamped down hard, and she tasted the coppery tang of blood where she bit her tongue. For a horrifying few seconds, her world narrowed to that unbearable agony and the utter, terrifying loss of control. As the taser cycle ended, leaving her gasping, trembling, and disoriented, a different kind of terror set in. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird, each beat sending jolts of renewed pain through her shocked system. The concrete was cold and rough against her cheek. Dimly, she was aware of figures standing around, some with the rectangular glint of cell phones in their hands, but no one moved to help her. The sounds of the street, traffic, distant sirens, seemed distorted, far away, drowned out by the roaring in her ears. The raw helplessness, the brutal, unprovoked violence, tore through the carefully constructed defenses she's built over decades. Suddenly, she wasn't on Elm Street anymore. She was back in a field supply depot in '68, a young sergeant, during a catastrophic warehouse collapse caused by a munitions mishap. Pinned by a fallen shelving unit, the air thick with smoke and the screams of the injured, the same crushing weight of helplessness, the same terror of being broken and alone, had consumed her then as it did now. Her breath came in shallow, ragged gasps. The small, silver pendant around her neck, cold against her skin, suddenly felt like her only link to a world that had just betrayed her. Unseen by Agnes, as her heart rate spiked to dangerous levels and her body registered the impact of the fall, the medical alert device within that pendant silently transmitted its urgent, coded signal. Officer Miller stood over Agnes's prone, twitching form, his taser still pointed loosely in her direction. He keyed his radio. Dispatch, 7, Adam, 12. Code 4 at Elm and 3rd. Subject down. Deployed taser. Suspect was non-compliant, acting erratically. Requesting backup and EMS supervisor. He made no move to check on Agnes's condition, his voice betraying no concern, only the clipped tones of someone reporting a routine, if slightly messy, resolution. A woman from a nearby bakery tentatively stepped forward, asking, "Is she okay?" She was just sitting there. Miller waved her back impatiently. "Ma'am, stay back. Scene's not secure." Less than 6 minutes after Agnes Holloway's medical alert had silently screamed for help, 3 black SUVs with tinted windows and discreet government license plates glided to a smooth, precise halt beside Officer Miller's cruiser, their arrival as swift and unexpected as a hawk descending. The lead vehicle's doors opened almost before it had fully stopped, and 3 individuals, 2 men and a woman, all in dark, impeccably tailored civilian suits, emerged with an air of quiet, purposeful urgency. Their movements were coordinated, their expressions serious, instantly signaling a level of authority that made the local police scene feel amateurish by comparison. The woman, who appeared to be in her late 40s with short, dark hair and an intensely focused gaze, strode directly towards Officer Miller, who was still attempting to shoo away a small, growing knot of concerned onlookers. She held up a leather billfold, flipping it open to reveal a gold federal badge and credentials. Special Agent Davies, Department of Veterans Affairs, Emergency Response and Protection Unit, she stated, her voice calm but carrying an undeniable weight of command that cut through Miller's bluster. "This is now a federal veteran welfare incident. Step aside, officer." Miller, visibly startled by their sudden appearance and the mention of federal jurisdiction, blustered, "Hey, this is my scene. I had a non-compliant individual." Agent Davies didn't even blink. "Officer, your scene involves the assault and medical endangerment of a federally registered vulnerable veteran, retired Army Sergeant Agnes Holloway, whose emergency beacon we just responded to. My primary concern right now is her well-being." As she spoke, one of her male colleagues, who carried a medical kit, was already kneeling beside Agnes, expertly assessing her condition, speaking to her in low, reassuring tones. The third agent began discreetly observing the surroundings, his eyes missing nothing. Local police backup, a second cruiser, had just pulled up, its siren dying with a wheeze. The 2 officers emerging looked confused as they took in the unexpected presence of the federal agents and the obvious shift in authority. Agent Davies, without taking her eyes off Miller, addressed them curtly, "We're VRPU. We have this. Secure the perimeter and await instructions from your supervisor, who I suggest you call immediately." Her tone left no room for argument. The local cops exchanged uncertain glances but did as they were told, their initial aggressive posture deflating. Agent Davies turned her full attention back to a now visibly sweating Officer Miller. Sergeant Agnes Holloway is a 75-year-old, service-disabled veteran under the VA's Vulnerable Elder Protection Program, Davies explained, her voice a low, controlled current of disapproval. Her medical alert device, which you apparently failed to notice, transmitted an immediate Class 1 distress signal indicating extreme physiological trauma, specifically, a cardiac red flag and impact trauma, the moment your taser was deployed. "We have telemetry, Officer Miller. Heart rate, respiration, G-force impact. The works." She paused, letting the implications sink in. "Our mandate," she continued, "is to provide immediate aid and ensure the safety and rights of veterans like Sergeant Holloway, especially when they are subjected to undue force or neglect by local authorities." Miller's bravado was rapidly evaporating, replaced by a pale, dawning comprehension of the monumental trouble he was in. She was acting suspiciously, he stammered, his earlier confidence deserting him. She wouldn't comply. I thought she might be reaching for something. Reaching for her VA appointment card, perhaps? Davies interjected, her voice like ice. Or her senior bus pass. Did you ascertain her identity or her destination before you resorted to discharging 50,000 volts into an elderly, disabled woman, officer? She gestured towards Agnes, now being gently helped into a sitting position by the VA medic, who was checking her pulse and speaking soothingly. Does that look like a dangerous individual to you? Witnesses, emboldened by the federal presence, began to speak up, their voices a chorus of condemnation for Miller's actions. She was just sitting there. He didn't give her a chance. He just zapped her, for no reason. Cell phone videos were already being offered to the other VARPU agent. Miller looked around wildly, his face ashen. The neat, orderly world he thought he controlled had just spectacularly imploded. The VARPU medic, having administered initial aid and stabilized Agnes, spoke quietly to Agent Davies. She's in considerable pain, shocky, definite taser marks, and her blood pressure is dangerously erratic. She needs a full workup at the VA hospital, not just the local ER. We need to transport her immediately. Agent Davies nodded. Arrange it. She then turned back to Officer Miller, whose supervisor, a flustered-looking police sergeant, had finally arrived and was being discreetly briefed by the third federal agent. Officer Miller, Davies said, her voice devoid of any emotion but carrying the full weight of federal authority, you are to have no further contact with Sergeant Holloway. Your actions today will be the subject of a full federal investigation, conducted by our agency in conjunction with the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division and the VA Inspector General. We will be looking at charges including, but not limited to, assault on a protected federal veteran, excessive use of force, and violation of the Americans with Disabilities Act. I suggest you retain counsel. Miller's face, if possible, grew even paler. His career, he knew with a sickening certainty, was over. Agnes Holloway was gently assisted into one of the waiting federal SUVs. The VA medic sat beside her, monitoring her condition. As the vehicle pulled away from the chaotic scene on Elm Street, leaving a disgraced Officer Miller to face his rapidly unraveling future, Agnes felt a trembling hand, Agent Davies, briefly cover her own. We've got you, Sergeant, Davies said softly. You're safe now. Later that day, at the Oak Haven VA Medical Center, after a thorough examination and treatment for her injuries and shock, Agnes spoke with her regular physician, Dr. Emily Carter, who was both appalled by the incident and relieved by the VAERPU's swift intervention. The assault had undeniably re-traumatized Agnes, but the immediate, decisive, and respectful care she received from the federal team was a powerful counter-narrative to Officer Miller's brutality. It was a stark reminder that while ignorance and cruelty still existed, so too did systems of protection, promises kept, however imperfectly, to those who had served. The nation, in some small, tangible way, still had her back. Comment below, what more can our communities do to recognize and protect elderly or disabled veterans like Agnes, who are often vulnerable and unseen? Have you ever seen a system work effectively to protect those in need, or do you have ideas on how such systems could be improved? Let's show our respect and unwavering gratitude for those who served our country, and actively advocate for their dignity, well-being, and safety long after their uniforms are put away. If Agnes's story shocked you and highlighted the urgent need for accountability, please like this video, share it to raise awareness about the challenges faced by our veterans, and subscribe for more stories that demand justice and underscore the importance of compassion.